time, I am convinced that having a personal website is one of the best investments you can make in yourself and in
So apparently, if I can convince you that the time it takes to set up your website and maintain.
Hey everyone, it's January 31st today, and I have 24 hours before I take my next flight to Bangkok for a work offsite. So I have challenged myself that in this 24 hours, I'm going to build the most important and slightly complicated feature of my next app, which is going to be speech to text to summary to text to speech. Let me tell you what exactly that is. Stay tuned. So I have opened up a Fig Jam and I'm going to start creating the flow here. First of all, it will be speech from user, and then we have transcribe. So basically we transcribe speech that we got into text that we can save to the database, and then we are going to save it to DB. Okay, that's the first flow. So that will happen when the user is providing updates of their task in the app. Once we are done with that, there will be a flow, which is the next time the user comes back to the app. When the next time the user comes back to the app, they probably, it's possible that they are coming back after a very long time. So they may forget what they actually did. What the app will do is that it will take the last 3-4 notes, audio notes, text notes from the user of that project and summarize it for the user, and we will convert it to speech so the app can speak it to the user if that's what the user prefers. So here we get the list of task notes. Once we get that, we summarize into one text summary with AI, convert it into audio, and then we play it to the user. So that's all. Let's go this.
But anyways, okay, now we are running late. I think it's my ADHD where I just love the feeling of rushing or something. I always leave things to the last minute and I don't know why, it's just by default. So anyways, we gotta go to breakfast.
I'm actually in progress with my audio summary feature. Currently I made the flowchart, and the flowchart includes how we get the speech from the user like I'm getting right now. Hi, so it is 11:35 a.m. right now. So I started with the cloud functions last night, and I think debugging the cloud functions was the hardest part. I am still left on some of the debugging, but I think I'll be able to finish it. So it is around 6 p.m. On Saturday, and I think I am done with most of the parts of the feature, but I think I could have taken better decisions in certain cases. Like first, I knew that I did not want to write all of this logic in the client side, and I was planning to use cloud functions to write the text to speech and speech to text logic, but I think I wasted a lot of time there. Early on, I was deploying the functions first and then debugging the logic, which is a terrible approach, of course, because deploying takes a lot of time and you can't even debug the code at breakpoints with this approach. And I was basically deploying and debugging and redoing and deploying and debugging again, and I think that was a completely terrible move. What I wanted to do was to test my functions outside of my Flutter app, like HTTP API call. So I wanted to use Postman for this to test my functions like an HTTP call. I also set up Firebase's function emulator that will help me debug these cloud functions locally when I call them from Postman. And that's when I was wasting even more time, because much later I realized that the function that I was writing was callable cloud functions, and they are supposed to be called from a Firebase and they cannot be called outside of it, which means that I cannot call them from any non-Firebase app or from Postman, etc. Now, after I figured this out, all I had to do was change the signature of this function and make this HTTP triggered cloud function rather than a callable function, just for debugging purposes. Now, this allowed me to directly call them from Postman, and then I could see the logs in the functions emulator right away. Now, once I was done with debugging, I could choose to deploy them as HTTP triggered functions, but I converted them back to callable functions again. So they can be now used in my Flutterflow app because it has built-in support for callable cloud functions and Firebase. Okay, so the next challenge, the speech to text worked well, but then I wanted to do text to speech, and I did not want to use AI for this because I think that is over-engineering for my simple use case. So I could use some simple standard packages in Flutter that can convert any text to speech. However, I did not want those old robotic sounding voices as well. And I also did not want to use AI for like a humanly sounding voice, because that is not very cost effective for me. So I tried to find a middle ground and found Google Cloud's text-to-speech API that doesn't use AI, and it can simply just convert the text into a base64 encoded string, and then I can use the base64 string and convert it into an audio file. Now I can upload this audio file to Firebase storage or Google Cloud storage and then use the network URL for playing it back to the user. But I really want to save the storage resources here because I don't want to store something that the user will never ever use again. I actually had already built the storage flow, but then I chucked it and rebuilt it again when I realized it's not very cost effective. So now I'll take this base64 string and convert it into a local temporary audio file that will be stored temporarily in the user's device, and then play that file back to the user for the time being. I will be using the Flutter's just audio package to play the audio file back to the user. Making a video for the audio summary feature. What I need to do is editing that needs to be done for all the cloud functions for the summarization part, because right now it is a very vague summary. I also have to input some data for project info and milestone info. Okay, so let me give you some info about the feature now. By this time, I'm done with the app's project creation flow and the task completion flow. And in this 24 hours, I wanted to build the task summary or context flow for the user. So how does it work exactly? So every time you're working on a side project of your own, you're not actually working on it every day, correct? So each time you're coming back to the project after a few days or weeks, you have lost context of the work that you had done in the past. With ADHD users, it's even more of a friction because the more time we take to restart, the more we push it away. So if I come back to the project again after a few days and I have 5 bugs and 3 half-baked features waiting for me, I may not be in the right headspace to figure it out how and where I left off or what I should do next. So that's why it was super important for me to build this before I leave for Bangkok tonight, because I will not be touching the project for a week at least, and when I come back I want to get back the context immediately so I can start working on the next task right away. So in this app, the task completion feature is slightly unique than other task management apps. Usually when we're working on a task, it may have 3 statuses like to do, in progress and completed. But I feel like there is a huge context window between to do and completed that we don't get to define much. In this app, when you're working on a task, you can choose to partially complete the task if you have done parts of the feature, and that eventually gives you the dopamine boost that you need at the end of the day. For example, I'm working on the task summary feature and I have made some progress on it, and I will be adding some text or audio notes to it to conclude my work of the day. These are the notes that I will be using later to create a summary of the task or the project for the user. So when the user comes back to the project, they have the context served in a platter right away. Right, so I successfully completed the 24-hour coding challenge before I flew for Bangkok, and I'm here now in this beautiful city. Through the challenge, I got 80% of the feature down. Now I need to fix my prompts and provide more project information to the summary logic to make sure it has all the context itself before it provides the summary to the user. Also, I don't know if you noticed in the clips in between, but I now have a name for the app. I am calling it Anchor. So yes, Anchor is a new solo project management app built for people who struggle with focus and need a system that works with their brain and not against it. And if you're interested in beta testing Anchor very soon, please fill the form linked in the description below, and I'll reach out to you soon once I have the app ready for testing. See you and happy building!